Hi, everybody. Hi. Introduction part 2. Welcome to Making Mother's Day Bloom by Alexis Sheffield, one of my favorite flower farmers. A reminder, I will be passing out surveys, your last one. We really do take what you say on those surveys and act on it in future years and future conferences and field days, so it means a lot. And without further ado, do it.
Okay, I'm a pacer, and I usually don't use a microphone because I'm very loud spoken, so please feel free to be like, you're not doing it right, all right? So as we go. Anyways, last session of the day and about flowers, and my room has so many people. Thank you guys for being here. I feel very flattered to be here. So my name is Alexis. I work at the University of Kentucky. I am in the horticulture department as an extension specialist, and I work specifically with the Center for Crop Diversification, if any of you have heard of that. It is also fondly known as the CCD. And so I have about 11 years of flower growing experience, so I'm just going to share that with you today. Hopefully you get something out of this. Please feel free to ask questions. I have a limited amount of time. I could talk all day about this one subject, right? So I'm kind of trying to cram a lot of things in that hopefully you can get something out of, but I have a resource page, I have contact information at the end. Please feel free to reach out to me or any of the other people that I'm going to talk about. So, first things first, I mentioned the Center for Crop Diversification, so I have to introduce my team that I'm very proud of. And so we are a group that is horticulture, hi, me, plant nerd in the room, as well as ag economists, which is the rest of my team. And so that's a beautiful partnership that we have here, right? Because we have great people who can teach you how to grow things. I like to think I'm among them. But then there's the selling, right? There's the selling of it and the marketing of it and all these wonderful things you all have heard today, branding. How do you make a budget for growing cosmos, those types of things. We have great ag economists who are good at spreadsheets, good at math, and all those fun things to tell you about that. So I'd like to show you all my team, and we just got this cute photo taken, and so I'd like to show that with you. Anybody. But we have a website, which is ccd.uky.edu, that has a lot of excellent cut flower along with vegetable, fruit, high tunnel, greenhouse, irrigation, pretty much anything that has to do with growing a specialty crop on it. We have over 200 crop profiles, so if you want to learn about growing ginger or turmeric or something a little more obscure, we have one on catnip, so there's lots on there, as well as, again, those budgets, a lot about cover crops, some really great information, kind of all in one spot for you, videos, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, but what you guys are here for is to talk about flowers, which is my favorite thing to talk about. So really quick, our agenda, our goal for today, I'm going to introduce you very briefly to some statistics. And again, I'm the plant person of my team, so the statistics will be very limited, but I want to introduce you to them. We'll talk predominantly about production because that's what I'm good at, and I think that's what a lot of you are here for, right? You're farmers, and you're like, tell me about the plants themselves. And then we'll talk a smidge about marketing and what I want you to start thinking about this year, next year, all these types of things. We'll talk a little bit about experiential things, and then I'm going to challenge you to do some things, all right? Please feel free to ask questions as we go. If there's something that maybe I glazed over you want to know more of, please feel free to ask. Okay, so some 2025 stats for you for Mother's Day. And I want to preface this by saying I got this from the Society of American Florists, which means that they are only surveying brick and mortar florists. They are not taking into account, as far as I could tell from all my reading, the farmers who are doing things, the flower farmers who are selling at farmers markets and a lot of those things. So I want you to keep that in mind because I think these stats would be a lot higher if those were taken into consideration, because the local flower movement has really taken off since I began, I guess 11 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever that was, has really taken off in many, many states, Kentucky being one of them. We are very fortunate here to have pretty successful local flower things. We've got 2 collectives in the state that are, employing a lot of growers. We've got people doing a variety of different things. And so we're really proud of that, and we've seen that growth in comparison to some of these states that surround us. So in 2025, 38% of Americans bought flowers or plants for mom, all right? we know that, right? Mother's Day is the biggest flower holiday. It sometimes overtakes Valentine's Day. Everybody thinks Valentine's Day, but Mother's Day is really the one we hit, especially as Kentucky growers, because it's cold in February, as we're about to experience. 23% of those buyers were using their local florist, so they're not using that 1-800 number or ordering, online and shipping it. It's coming from California to, Connecticut or whatever it is. So they're ordering from those local in-town communities, and that is actually up. And what was surprising about that and what was brought up in this article was that even though there was an economic downturn, right? We know people just didn't have as much money to spend. Last year, numbers were still up buying for mom. So people were like, I don't have a lot of money, but my mom's worth it. And I think that's beautiful, right? It's a beautiful thing. The average purchase was also up. It was up to $71 that people spent on their mother. So I thought that was really an interesting thing as you all think about your pricing. We're not going to talk specifically about pricing today because, again, I'm the plant person, not the ag economist, and they can help you with that. But $71 people are willing to spend there as the average. And then one thing, and this goes into what we're going to talk about from a marketing perspective, is the things that the top factors for them when they purchased were obviously finances, right? We all want to know what the price is, are we getting the best deal, but also convenience. So those were the top two that was interesting. So something you, as the person selling something for someone to purchase, need to be taking in mind. Are my prices fair, and am I in the market that people are willing to spend that type of money, and is it convenient for them to buy? Pretty basic stuff there. Okay, now production, the fun stuff, the plant things. So there's two really big things in production, and I am very aware that at this time of the year, a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are too far gone for a lot of you to be able to do production-wise. So hopefully you're going to take this into next year, aka this fall, for growing, as we talk about timing. There are some things, of course, you can still do this year, but some of this is not. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm aware that it's a little beyond. So there are specific species or certain types of flowers that we recommend growing to hit the Mother's Day market. And then there are two kind of time slots in general that we wrap those into as we talk about production. So there's fall planting, which is for most people in most of Kentucky is going to be the best time to plant for Mother's Day from an annual perspective. I'm going to bring up some perennials here later and just kind of a list to talk about, but predominantly we're going to talk about things as treating them as annuals. All right, so for Mother's Day, most of the time our things are going to be fall planted. You have a longer bloom time with these. You have higher quality stems usually. So we're talking about you have larger blooms, you have longer stems, so you just have that top tier number one quality stem. And you can get into a market earlier. And so I know we're talking specifically about Mother's Day, but if you are in that market earlier in the season, then you have kind of a guaranteed spot for Mother's Day. Versus if no one's ever seen your face before at a farmer's market or something like that, it could be harder to make a sale on that Mother's Day. There are many disadvantages for those of you who have done some fall planting, and maybe you have a high tunnel, right? It was really fun to have a high tunnel during an ice storm recently, for those of you who have experienced that. Got a good shoulder workout this past weekend. So there's a lot of maintenance that goes along with that, making sure that you're watering occasionally, and in the winter, that can be really tough. You're banging off snow, you're making sure you're taking off the blankets when it gets too warm, but you're also going home to put it back on. I like to think of my high tunnels as a toddler that I have to go home and take care of, and so, you don't get to necessarily do those fun things because you need to be home by 4 o'clock to close everything up, right? Those of you who maybe have livestock have experienced this. There is a higher risk of loss because it's 3 degrees outside, right? So you're struggling through that. There's a higher risk if your soils are really wet and really cold. You can have rots. There's a lot of things that go along with that. Animals, mice, those types of things love to eat on your tulip bulbs. That can be a problem. And you don't have an off season. And so any of you, again, who have done crops that you're overwintering, usually you would like to rest during that time. And yes, things are a little bit slower, but it's not the kind of thing where you get to necessarily go on vacation, right? Because maybe you do, and you're more, I had some looks back in the back that were like, we go. But if you have someone who's willing to watch your farm, that's awesome. Not all of us live in areas where there's someone who we would trust maybe necessarily to go through an ice storm and take care of our high tunnels. I know I wouldn't, but I'm a little controlling. So there is no off season for a lot of people if they're doing some winter growing. So just something to keep in mind. Then we have the spring planting season. So a lot of cut flower growers are going to make use of both of these, and you'll see why. So advantages. You're going to get usually your first cuts and cut flowers, the first harvest, first into second harvest are your strongest ones. Usually those are your longest stems. They may have the biggest blooms, the most branching, the most buds on there. So a lot of the times those are just the cream of the crop premium ones. So if you plant in spring, those plants are going to mature later, even if they're the same species as the ones in the fall. They're going to mature later, so you get that premium first cut later in the season. And so it's a way to succession plan, which is why you see a lot of cut flower growers doing a little bit of both. So they're getting more high quality stems longer into the season. Of course, you have less risk of cold or animal damage because the plants are in the ground less time, right? Just plain and simple. And then in general, there's probably a little bit less maintenance because if you're not starting them and they're not going in the ground until March versus going into the ground previous October or November, you're not blanketing nearly as much. And so from a labor perspective, as you think about how much it costs you, as you should be considering your labor when you pay yourself, right? All of us, I'm telling myself that as well, need to be considering that if you are doing less of that, then you're going to make more money on that crop, right? There's less labor that go into them. Some disadvantages of spring planting, especially if you're doing this outside where you're getting a lot of precipitation. Your beds need to be prepared in the fall because what do we know about the spring? It rains and the soil never dries out, right? So if you don't have beds prepared for a spring planting, outside, then you're gonna struggle to get your plants in, all right? Your stems are often shorter because those plants they don't have as long of a growing season, so your stems are often shorter. If you're doing a lot of vase arrangements or things like that, not a big deal. But if you're selling to florists or you need some, making some really big bouquets, that might be a struggle. There's also a smaller bloom window, right? Because a lot of these plants that we're going to talk about don't like the heat. Feel that, right? And so they're going to shut down when our temperatures get to 70. Well, what usually happens in April for like a week or two? We get obnoxiously hot, and those plants are going to shut down a lot of the time. So you have a smaller bloom window, and then you're planting into cold soil. So a lot of the plants we're going to talk about, not a huge deal. They prefer to be cool, but sometimes those soils can be a little bit too cool, and you're going to get rot, you're going to get stunting, you're going to get calcium and nitrogen deficiencies, you're going to have a lot of problem there. So it does take a little bit of tweaking depending on what you're growing. Questions so far? Okay. All right, so just jumping right into some crops. Start with this one because it is usually the one people want to grow first because it's the prettiest. It also has a really long vase life. People think it's just incredible, so you put it in a bouquet, you can sell it to florists. There's a really wide market depending on what you want to do for something like ranunculus. If you're going to grow them, you are going to need some type of season extension. So it doesn't have to be a high tunnel, but I say season extension in the way of something plastic. So whether you're growing in a raised bed and you just put some plastic over top of it and you put some clips on to give it a little bit of extra insulation, a little bit of extra humidity, all those little things that we know happen with some sort of plasticulture system, ranunculus are going to be the most successful. If you're in western part of the state where it's going to be a little bit warmer, a little bit longer, maybe you get a little more sunshine than we do here in central Kentucky, maybe you can get away with some row cover. But my experience and working with a lot of growers is that the best quality is going to be from something in plastic. So these corms, which is what these are coming from, corms. Is everybody familiar with corms? It's sort of like a bulb type structure. They look, for ranunculus, they kind of look like a little octopus. They got little legs on them. So these have to be ordered around March to April. It gets earlier and earlier every year. I just saw an email the other day that someone said one of the suppliers were saying they were going to finalize their ranunculus catalog, and these things sell out fast. All right, so the high quality, very large buds like you're seeing in these photos sell out really quickly. It's very limited as to what you can do, so you've got to order them early. Well, guess what? A lot of the time, you're ordering these before your previous planting has even come, you've sold a single stem, which can be really frustrating from a cash flow perspective and from just farming. If you're not getting a lot of cash flow in the winter, that can be hard, right, to put in some of those orders. So usually you're going to plant these October through December as a fall planting. You're going to get your strongest plants out of a fall planting, but we'll talk about it in spring as well. And so you're going to plant them. You can do multiple successions, October through December, depending on what the weather's been. You know, we kind of had a weird cold spell in November this year, but then we warmed back up in December, right? So there's an ideal planting window there. Depending on what type of structure you have them in, whether it's a high tunnel or a plastic low tunnel structure, you can get blooms March through May. It also depends on what our weather is going to do. Depending on your spring temps, so I was looking back through my notes, I tried to take some diligent notes surrounding major holidays of what my production looked like. And the past few Mother's Days, we've been really warm for the couple weeks before. And so the ranunculus actually shut down last year. It was like by a week I missed ranunculus season for Mother's Day because they are going to really stop blooming around 65. So when you have them in a high tunnel, right, which is what I'm telling you is ideal, they're going to shut down earlier. There are some farms in the state who will do that second planting in the spring that we'll talk about. They'll do that outside, and so they're able to get away with just a little bit of row cover, and they'll get just a flush right in time for Mother's Day. So there is some things there that you have to take into account. And there are some farms that have stopped growing ranunculus because they are very expensive to grow. So a corm can cost $2, and you have to order a minimum of $100. And so at $200, and you're gonna, have to budget that out. A lot of people just can't afford to grow these. And I want to preface that by saying that's okay to not grow something because it doesn't make you money. I think a lot of time we feel forced to grow these things because everybody grows ranunculus and they're so pretty. And yes, that's true, but if you're not making money on them, why are you growing them? Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. Outside planting. Are you planting them outside? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Outside planting would be the way I would go, because with flowers, in vegetable production, some people will put in like misters to try and cool the area, like around lettuce or something like that, right? You can't do that with flowers because you can't get water spots on them. You can't do a lot of those things. Humidity is a big deal with flowers. So really, you're just trying to get more airflow on them and cool them down. Outside is the easiest way to do that. Vents. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will help. You'll be surprised, yeah. But yes, these are very high value flowers. You can sell them at a high price. If you're doing it right, they are long lasting in a vase. So if you're trying to convince a customer maybe that local flowers are so much better than Kroger flowers or whatever, these will last 2 weeks in a vase with someone not really paying attention to them as far as water and all that kind of thing. And they're well received by the right customer. So there's just a lot of people listen, someone gives you that and nobody's gonna be mad. Who's gonna be mad about that, right? No one. So it's a great, no one's mad about getting ranunculus, I guess I should say. All right, so snapdragons, I'm gonna talk about. Snapdragons are one of my favorite things to grow. They have a long bloom window if you play the game correctly, which has to do with groups. But these do require some type of season extension, at least in probably southern and eastern Kentucky. And I say some type as in like just frost fabric. These are very cold hardy. Snapdragons are, if planted at the right stage. If you're in, western Kentucky or far southern Kentucky, some frost fabric will be just fine for these guys. They thrive, and even in temperatures like this, basically they just do a self-pinching. They're gonna look really dead, and then in another month they're gonna sprout up from that root system. And so they're super happy. They're also easy to grow from seed. So that's really nice when you start thinking about how expensive some of these corms and these bulbs can be. If you can buy a pack of seed, from Johnny's, who's got a lot of great Snapdragons these days, for $4, and you have hundreds and hundreds, that's really awesome, right? But a lot of people for a fall planting will actually order their plugs, and because the one thing about growing fall plants from seed is that they want a cool start. And when you're starting these in August, what is the temperature in Kentucky? Yeah. So a lot of people, if they're not able to put them somewhere where they can have a cool start, they'll go ahead and order plugs for the fall. Just heads up on that. All right, so you can plant these September through October. I wouldn't push it too much further than October, at least in this, again, that central area. Maybe you can push it to late October in a warmer part of the state. But because we want them to have a really strong root system before they go into these really cold temperatures. Because otherwise, you're not gonna get that thing where it's 3 degrees outside and then they bounce back from the roots because they don't have any roots if you don't put them in early enough. So I would caution you not to go too far beyond October unless you're in a high tunnel type structure. Bloom time can be very dependent. This is very dependent on their groups. So group numbers and flowers, there's a little bit of this in the vegetable world, but I see it mostly in flowers. Snapdragons is one of the big ones, and Lisianthus is the other that we see a lot. But there's 1, 2, and 3 in the Snapdragon group. So for a fall planting, we usually like to say group 1 and 2. And the reason why is they prefer it cooler and they like low light. That's a big one that we sometimes forget about, is the light is way different in the winter than it is in the summer and in the later spring. And so we need to take that light into account, especially with things like Snapdragon. So I usually recommend group 1 and 2 for a fall planting. And there's also like group 1-2 and 2-3, and they get really crazy with it, but they're fun. This is a great crop if you're trying to get into the florist wholesale route. If you've not had great luck getting some of your crops to a florist, they know what Snapdragons are. They know how to use them. It is a very big thing in the world. It's actively used. They would love to have local ones because all the reasons we know why local is so much better than shipped things. And specifically, I would tell you to grow the Madam Butterfly or the Chantilly ones because those do not ship well. And so you can grow a premium product for them that they know how to use. It's not as scary as they, start to learn to buy local, and they can't find these usually at their wholesaler. And so those would be the ones I would recommend to you. But yeah, Snapdragons, love them. The Madam Butterfly and Chantilly smell really good, which is another thing that florists aren't used to because they don't get things that smell good because they've been shipped for 2 weeks in a box. And a lot of the things that are shipped, the smell is bred out of them. So you're giving them a lot of bang for their buck when you give them these local products. All right, anemone. A lot of time we rope anemone in with ranunculus because you're usually purchasing them from the same place. They're also a corm, but these ones look like little acorns, and you treat them very similar. Although I would say, from a plant perspective, I think anemone is a little bit hardier than ranunculus. They'll take a beating pretty well, but they're really lovely. They're very well known to the consumer, both from a wholesale perspective as well as retail. These do require some type of season extension. Again, ideally this would be plastic structure of some kind. They do tolerate more cold in my experience than ranunculus will. So they're just a little hardier. They'll take more cold, they'll take a little bit more heat. They just want to keep blooming, and that's something that we really love. Again, these corms have to be ordered early. So you're gonna order for this 2026 fall here in another 2 months, right? Maybe even a month. So you start looking for that. You're gonna plant these October through December, same as ranunculus. We treat them kind of the same. We get that March through May, depending on where you are and what type of structure you're in. Again, technically, the literature will tell you they really shut down when soil temps get to 65, which sometimes can be before the Mother's Day window. But I will say that these anemone usually will bloom for about 10 to 14 days longer than ranunculus in my experience. So sometimes you can get away with them. These are a very high value flower like ranunculus, maybe not quite as high value as ranunculus are, but they're up there with them. So therefore they're also expensive to grow, because the reason they're high value is because they're expensive to buy. And they are well received by the right customer. Again, your event florists specifically, if you're doing the wholesale market, love anemones, but I'm finding more and more that just the average retail client really loves them, especially the white with the black center in them. They really can recognize that, which is one thing you're trying to capitalize on, is what people recognize in the flower world. And then you mix in some new stuff, right? You mix in the pink, or you mix in flowers that they don't know a ton about, and you get them used to them. Yeah?
If you buy forms in March or April, are there anything in particular that you need to do? Because you're going to plant them
They won't come to you until the fall. Yes, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So you're gonna send somebody your money, or at least your credit card information, in March or April, and then they usually ship to you depending on what zone you're in, things like that. But they'll usually ship to you in October is when they'll start, and so then you're kind of immediately going into grow mode with those. Yeah, great question. All right, bells of Ireland. Hit or miss with bells of Ireland. You love them and you hate them at the same time, in my experience. So these do require some type of season extension, like most of the things I'm talking about today. Again, ideally a plastic structure. You can do them under remay in the perfect conditions. I would say if you're in western or southern Kentucky, you could probably more likely get away with some remay or frost fabric that way. They are very hard to start from seed. If you've started them from seed, because I always get the person who's like, I can start them from seed. You're amazing. I'm so proud of you. I cannot. And I know a lot of people who cannot. So I would recommend you order them from plugs. Order them as plugs, all right? And they're not a super expensive plug in the realm of buying cut flower plugs in. So I would recommend you buy them. You're going to plant these late September into October. Unless you're in another part of the state, you can probably push it a little bit further than that. These are going to bloom in May, in my experience. They're kind of right on time. Those are a Mother's Day bouquet right there that they're in. These do have a long harvest window, so there's a catch, right? The catch is that they have some disease issues. So if you're one of the lucky ones who get the perfect season with bells of Ireland, you got weeks and weeks to be able to harvest them. Florists love them, so they are a great wholesale crop. They're great greenery, quote unquote greenery, early in the season. If you don't have a ton of perennials yet that you're working with, this can be something to really round out a bouquet for you at like a market or something. But for a lot of us in Kentucky, we're going to have disease issues with bells of Ireland. And so they're beautiful, they're gorgeous, and then all of a sudden they get leaf spot. And that's not great, because you have these beautiful, little round green cups here, and they start getting these like straw colored spots on them. And then they're useless, all right? And that's very frustrating. They also can be susceptible to rust. And so you'll go from having a really beautiful crop and you're like, cool, I'm gonna harvest those. And for next week, I got a big order for them. And then by the time you go to harvest, they're done. And you can't sell them once they're at that point. People will complain, okay? So, if you've got issues with disease, if you're in a bowl where you don't get a lot of air movement or something like that, this would not be the crop I'd recommend. But it does have the time and place. So I like to tell people about it. All right, campanula or campanula, also bellflower, however you say it. It's Latin, it's a dead language. I'm gonna say it however I want, and I want you to also do the same, okay? So, campanula is how I say it, and it's probably wrong. But it is a lovely, lovely crop people love. Again, requires some type of season extension. I do recommend plastic. My experience in central Kentucky, trying to extend my bloom time a little bit, I tried doing just remay, and they were not super happy. The plants did technically survive, but they were not a quality that I would want to send out. So I would recommend at least a low tunnel. In this photo in the pink, that's under a low tunnel, and they were huge even under that. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to put the time into growing these, to grow them under plastic. These can be grown from seed fairly easily, but again, it's kind of that like toss-up. You're in the middle of summer, you're harvesting, you're trying to get all this stuff done, and the last thing you want to do is take care of seeds when it's 80 degrees and they're mad, okay? So buying them in, and you also can get some cultivars that are done from tissue culture, which are going to be your higher value ones. From an organic standpoint, that's going to be hard. Organic plugs in the flower world are very hard to come by, I will say that. So you're going to plant these September, October, depending on where in the state you're at. These are going to bloom in May, usually right in time for Mother's Day, at least in central Kentucky. They're kind of right on that cusp, and you're going, please, please, please bloom. And so they're going to be right in there. They are daylight dependent. So all the flowers we've talked about up until now do not need a certain day length to bloom. Campanula is different. It's signaled bloom once it hits 12 hours. The reason I bring that up to you is because if you do a spring planting, which I'm going to get to, that can be a problem, that 12-hour signal to bloom. So we'll get into that, but keep that in mind. These can blow out fast in warm temperatures. When I say blow out, I just mean bloom and like suddenly be done. If we get those warm temps like we often do in May, when you're, and they're in the high tunnel, they're under plastic somewhere, and it's 85 degrees in the tunnel, they're so happy, they're too happy. And then all of a sudden, literally in 2 to 3 days, your crop can be done blooming. And so that's not great if you have a market or, on Saturday and they're blown out by Wednesday. Not ideal. Yeah. Stage to cut. So I don't have a pointer on here, or I don't know how to use the pointer on here, but that photo in the purple, that one that's close up where you've got the first one at the top of that stem that's blooming, and then a couple down below that are colored but not open, that's your ideal stage to cut, because those will open. These ones here are still in the ground, and see how those buds are still pretty green and you're not seeing a ton of pink? That one's probably too tight to cut. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, totally. Yeah. So these have a great vase life because they have so many buds on them. That inflorescence there's a bunch on there that they last a long time. They last a long time in the vase by themselves, but you also have so many blooms on them that they're great for a bouquet. If you've got really tall stems too, you're going to get kind of multiple cuttings even out of those. So it just kind of depends on your style of growing. But these are great. Wholesalers love these. They come in whites and pinks and blushes and lavenders and all those pretty spring colors. So florists love these. They're an easy sell if you're just trying to get into the wholesale market. This is a good one for you. They're also great for bouquets. Like I said, people think they're roses. Little kids love them because they look like little fairy cups, little, something they would give to their dolls. They're just a really lovely flower. The only downside of them is they can have some disease issues. And by can, I mean I've never once grown them in the 11 seasons I've grown them, and I've not had a disease issue. And that's on multiple farms. Again, if you're one of those lucky people who haven't, tell me your secrets. But especially if you're growing organic, this is going to be an issue. If you've ever had sclerotinia, or you've ever had root rots in your tomatoes or any of your crops, don't plant your campanula there, because it will get it, and it is not happy about it. There are some things like actinovate, I believe, is an organic option, but there are some that you can do some drenches on and things like that. But it is a very expensive treatment. It's like $100, and it goes bad in like a year, and it's a tiny bag. So it's not something I love to use. Usually I'm just hoping for the best in that. But it is a great one, and it's relatively easy to grow. Buplurum. Greenery is something that is hard to come by in the spring for a lot of people. Again, if you're into perennials or you do a lot of foraging and can get some high quality foliage that way, that's great. But sometimes we're lacking. And the foliage, especially for Mother's Day bouquets, it really rounds them out. You kind of get more bang for your buck that way. Bupleurum is a good one for something like this. And so technically it is a flower, but we kind of think of it more of a foliage. It is also great if you're selling to wholesalers. They love them some Bupleurum, all right? It does require some type of season extension, but fabric is fine. This thing takes being cold. It's great. It'll direct sow outside. I would say either order plugs or direct sow it into the ground. Do not try and start it. It does need some vernalization, which is why it's kind of hard to start. If you're just a plant nerd and you want to try it, by all means go for it, but I would say just direct sow it. It's way cheaper to do it that way, or order your plugs. You're going to plant this October into November because you can direct sow it. You can plant later in the season. Everybody knows what I mean when I say direct sow, right? Okay, great. Sometimes there's mixed crowds and I'm never sure. This blooms April through June, depending on where you're planting it at. You can extend your season with this. So if you put a patch in the high tunnel, a patch under fabric outside, and a patch under a plastic low tunnel, you basically have 3 different successions that you can have there. So if this is a great crop for you, you experiment it, people love it, I would say go for it and do those kind of 3 different ones and have it for longer in the season. This can be a nuisance depending on what you grow. It can be a nuisance if it's allowed to go to seed. And I personally don't care if it goes to seed because to me that's free plants and I'll dig them up and move them. But for some people, if you're very particular, this can be very annoying to you, all right? So it doesn't, thrive in the heat by any means, but you will see it come up everywhere in November in the high tunnel. But, if you're me and you like free things, you just go dig them up and move them. They do pretty well that way. Okay, larkspur, great, excellent. For something, if you want to grow something easy outside that you don't have to care a lot about, larkspur is the one for you. And it's pretty and comes in really great spring colors. It does do better with some sort of protection. You could grow this outside with 0 protection, but from a cut flower standpoint, we are growing a premium crop. We are not growing bedding plants. We are growing something we want to be perfect, right? Whether it's for your customer, your retail customer, or a florist, you want to be delivering a perfect product or as close as possible. To do that, I would recommend some sort of fabric or plastic. I would definitely recommend ordering plugs of these. I have tried and tried, and I have asked all of the people who are way better at growing plugs than me what the secret is. And the secret is a lot of patience, which I don't always have, and the perfect amount of cooling. I have grown a handful of these from seed, and I can promise you it is not worth it, and it took up too much space in my cooler because you got to put these seeded trays into your cooler. So order plugs or just direct sow it. It's great direct sown. But if you want like a really specific color and you want to make sure that you have exactly what you need for the spring and for Mother's Day, then go ahead and order plugs. Plant them in October through November if you're giving some season extension. Long bloom window I have found because you're going to get a second cutting off of this. And so again, depending on what type of structure you're in, you can get April through June, which is perfect for Mother's Day. Florists love it, and I do want to say this is not to be confused with delphinium, and I say that because larkspur and delphinium, what we call in the floral trade delphinium, are in the same family, but they are cousins, and so you'll see if you know what delphinium looks like, it looks very similar to this, but it is, from a floral trade perspective, not what I'm talking about. So when you go look it up by larkspur. All right, so jumping up, we're not going to do every single crop that I talked about, and we're going to talk about them as spring, because I've already told you about them. In general, the treatment is going to be the same of them, all right? So something like ranunculus, you can do another round of planting. So maybe you put in your fall stuff. You can do another round January through March. You can spread those out if you want that first cut. That's going to be that perfect first cut later in the season. do a March planting. Maybe do it outside or put it on the, side of your high tunnel that gets a lot more wind movement and is going to be cooler or something along those lines. So these can be done with later season extension. I've seen people put them outside under just a little bit of agribon, and they've been a little short, but they've been big, fat, juicy buds, and so they were able to sell them. Anemones, same way. You can do less season extension needs if you're planting them later because it's warmer. Snapdragons, remember they have group numbers. So if you're going to do a spring planting, you're going to look for groups 2 and 3. And so that's a great way to extend that season, especially if you're selling to wholesalers or you're doing wedding design or something along those lines. You can have snapdragons, March through July if you do the groups correctly. I'll talk about resources and you're like, what groups? There's a really great chart I want you to know about. And then most of these direct seeders that I have talked about and will talk about here in another slide can be done again in March. And so you can direct seed that bupleurum in October and then do it again in March and have a really good success and have plants later. And you're probably going, Alexis, you keep saying these really big bloom windows for flowers. We're talking about Mother's Day. Yeah, but flowers don't just bloom for Mother's Day, right? We'll talk about that with marketing. And so I'm kind of giving you things that span Mother's Day or at least going to hit close enough to it that you can have flowers for that. I would not recommend spring planting larkspur. Again, they need a certain amount of vernalization, that cool period, to be super successful. You might be able to hit that window if you're lucky, but it's a little bit more difficult. So planting in the fall is pretty easy to do. Just go forth with it, and has a long enough bloom window. I don't think it's really necessary. The campanula, remember I said it needed 12 hours signals it to bloom. It'll send up a bloom spike once temps get to, or when daylight hours hit 12 hours. So, meaning, if you're planting in the fall, it's growing all winter, right? It's getting a good root system, it's putting on lots of leaves, it's a healthy plant, and then when it gets to 12 hours, you got this beefy plant, it's gonna send up a nice bloom spike. But if you plant that in March or April, 12 hours comes a lot sooner. So you're not getting this beefy plant with this good root system before it sends up a bloom spike. I have seen people do it anyways, and for them and their specific market, they were able to get enough stem length that worked for them. And they had campanula way later than everybody else. And that's awesome, right? That worked for what their market was. So that's why I put debatable question mark on it. Not something I'm gonna do for my market because if I'm selling wholesale to florists, they want the biggest stems I can send them. And if I send them a short one, they're gonna be mad, all right? So it just really depends on what your market is up to when you wanna plant them later. Some other species I did not talk about because we could be here all day of all the species I could talk about that you could plant, but ones that I would recommend for our areas, poppies, Icelandic poppies specifically. Those are the ones for flowers, not the pods. You can grow the pods as well. That's just a different species of poppy. So the Icelandic poppy, champagne bubbles is one, a popular one. True delphinium, not larkspur, delphinium, another great one. That blue color is very unusual in the flower world, meaning people want it because they can't have it. Everybody wants blue. Stock can be a little less forgiving, I would definitely not be something I would plant outside of a high tunnel, because even in a high tunnel, at these temps, it probably would have melted already. But spring planting, you can probably get away with. Foxglove is a great one for tunnels or outside. It's pretty hardy. There's biennial versions of it, and there are versions cultivars that'll bloom the first season. So I want you to pay attention to that when you go buy them. Whether you're doing seed or you're ordering plugs, if you want them to bloom in this first year, the Dalmatian series would be one that I would recommend for foxglove. And then sweet peas actually do really well here in our area, and the foliage as well as the flowers are highly coveted from the florist trade. Okay, that's all I'm covering for production. I'm going to cover a few more direct seeders, but any questions before we jump into marketing? Yeah. Yep. They, do you pre-sprout them? So the best luck I've had personally, and this is just, I think you have more room for error once you get them outside if you pre-sprout them inside. And I pull my dad, and this is probably not the most efficient way, but I remember him doing this with various beans and stuff for the garden growing up, is he puts them between wet paper towels, and he puts them in a plastic bag, and he threw them on the counter and didn't look at them again for, you know, a week. And once that little radical starts to push out, then they're ready and put them in the ground. Don't wait too long. They do not love root disturbance. So once that little radical is popped out, you can drop it in. Some people have great luck direct sowing it as well, but I just like to be a little bit more sure that that seed is alive before I put it in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is, I don't know if you saw my note, I didn't mention it, but this is not an exhaustive list because I couldn't, again, I could be here all day. So feel free to ask. Dianthus is a great one. Oh no, what have I done? Yeah, no, Dianthus is excellent to grow as well. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's jump into a little bit more about marketing because it's really great if you can grow all these flowers, but if you can't sell them, then what are you doing here, right? Or why are you a business, I guess I should ask. It's great to grow flowers for your neighbors and all that stuff, but ranunculus are expensive, so I am personally not giving those ones away. All right, so for Mother's Day, your main market channels, not all of them, some of you are gonna sell to things I've not mentioned, but I think most people's main market channels are going to be retail, so something direct to consumer, something like a farmer's market. Maybe you're taking website orders and doing delivery. Maybe you just have a farm stand that people are coming to, but it's direct, it's retail. You may be doing wholesale. Mother's Day is a great time to get into the wholesale market if you have a premium product. You can go direct to florists, which is what I will be specifically talking about, but you could also go to the wholesaler that the florist then buys from. You're gonna get a lower price point, but you're gonna move a lot more product. So it depends on what your goals are for your farm, the way you like to operate. I do a whole presentation on deciding between those two. So, and then also CSAs can be really great sales for Mother's Day. So you can either start them the week of Mother's Day and they get the first bouquet to give to mom, or you can do it starting the week after Mother's Day. So that means you have even more flowers to sell the week of Mother's Day to the people who just want one bouquet, and then you start your bigger ticket item the week after. A lot of people have moved to doing that. So if you're doing direct to consumer, you're doing retail, advertise early. At least, at a bare minimum, you should be talking about this in some form or fashion a month early, at least. And I would say, I would challenge you to be at least, putting stuff like when you plant your dianthus, it doesn't matter if you plant it in the fall or you plant it in March, whenever that is, you're saying, oh, can't wait to have these for Mother's Day. Or these make the best Mother's Day bouquets, or you plant it and you show a picture of something that you've used for Mother's Day in the past. So I'm gonna challenge you to advertise early, and a minimum of a month early of what you're gonna have available. I want you to think about how you're gonna make purchase easy. Remember when we looked at those Mother's Day stats? The two biggest things were the price and how easy was it to order. So is it easy to purchase from you? Where can they find you? So a month ahead of time. Hey, we're gonna be at the farmer's market on Mother's Day. Will you be there? Our farm stand will be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Mother's Day. Stop by. All those types of things are what's important. So where can they find you? I would say have multiple price points. Don't go too crazy. I like to say, think of your ideal price point. We know the average spending was $71. Doesn't mean you have the market to sell $71 bouquets for sure, but just say like, I like to make, if you've done this before, you might say a good price point for the style bouquet I like is $35. Perfect, that's your ideal price point. Now I want you to make one level up. I want you to make a $50, a $55 bouquet up from that. Or if your ideal price point is $50, I want you to have a $75 option, because what that signals in people's mind is that that $35 bouquet is a really good deal, right? And so if you price anything lower, then they're gonna a lot of times go for the lower one when you really want to push the $35 as your ideal bouquet. And so having, 2 options or even 3, and you have $35, $55, $75, that makes that $35 bouquet look really tasty. All right, so think about it that way. Don't go too crazy with the amount of options you have, but I would challenge you to have at least one level up from your ideal. And I want you to advertise often. And I know it feels kind of gross, whether you're doing social media or you're doing email marketing, but I want you to advertise often. And again, that can be something as simple as planting these dianthus for Mother's Day. That's advertising, even if you're not directly saying, here's my $35 bouquet, right? People need to see things 7 to 8 times before they take action and buy something. Think about it. Think about when you're scrolling social media. How many times have you seen the advertisement for those new pairs of shoes you really want? It takes several times before I finally click the link. And I'm like, okay, but how much are they, right? Lots. We want people to see this 7 to 8 times before Mother's Day so that they even think about us when they go to purchase. Which is why if you're only starting a month ahead, a minimum of twice a week, you're getting Mother's Day out to people. All right, if you're gonna do wholesale to florists, that's what I'm talking about specifically, you need to have your production dialed in, all right? This is not something I would recommend if you don't have at least 2 years of spring flowers, because Mother's Day is the biggest season, and if you do not deliver, you have just ruined a relationship that you could have for many years to come, because if they don't have the flowers they need for one of the biggest sale orders of the year, they're gonna be real mad at you, all right? It also, take this for what it's worth, but the cut flower to florists in Kentucky, local to florists, is relatively new, right? We're still trying to build relationships. We're still trying to prove that buying, local snapdragons is better than Columbia snapdragons or Holland tulips. Your tulips are better, whatever that is. So what we don't want is, number one, to ruin our personal relationship, our farm's relationship, but also we don't want to ruin it for the people coming after us. We don't want the wholesaler to say, oh, local flowers aren't great. They don't ever last. And ruin it for other farmers, right? This is a community of flower growers that we're building. And so if you can't think of yourself in that way, think of the person in the farm nearby that you want to make sure you're supporting. So you've got, and I don't mean, when I say you must deliver, I don't mean you have to actually deliver to their business. You probably do, but what I mean here is you have to deliver on your promise. If you tell them you're going to have white ranunculus and you're going to have at least 10 bunches of white ranunculus, and you will hold them for them, you better bring them 10 beautiful bunches of ranunculus, all right? Because their business depends on it. And if you are selling to them, you want them to thrive so that you can also thrive, right? So florists need 2 to 3 months lead time on what will be available. It's not saying you guarantee you're gonna have white ranunculus for the florists, in February. I'm not saying you have to guarantee that, but it's nice to reach out and tell them what you should have. You know that you should, if all goes as planned, have pink campanella. So you can let them know that, and they can start planning around that. And then about 2 weeks before Mother's Day, you can start doing those more hardcore numbers. But you need to let them know ahead of time. Hey, don't order your snapdragons from your international place. Order them from me. I'm gonna have pink because they want pink. Grow lots of pink. Moms, even if moms don't love pink, they somehow love pink on Mother's Day, okay? That's all I can tell you. Grow lots of pink. And then CSAs. CSAs can be a really great way to start your season, to get some of that money flowing earlier. We know this, right, about vegetables, but consumers are often looking for the higher dollar price point. Remember that $71 was kind of the average. I would say CSAs are a great way to, you can advertise it by offering a split. And so I found a lot of people doing that, right? Siblings, if it's $100 for a 1-month CSA, I can spend $50 and my brother can spend $50. And that's something nice. And then for 4 weeks, mom gets this. And so advertising it that way can be a really great way to do it when it's at that higher price point. You can split it. So definitely think about that. Like I said, you can start the week of Mother's Day, or if you expect to have a lot of other sales, those one-off sales, which we see a lot for Mother's Day, then start it the week after. And then be prepared to have a digital gift certificate. You can print it if you want. I don't have access to a great printer personally, so I just say I'll email you a digital, beautiful thing I made on Canva for free, and it has all the details. I would say have that ready anyways, because as we know, sometimes communication with CSAs can be hard. And so when they're giving them as a gift, as they often are with flowers, that communication part can be hard. Mom doesn't know that every Thursday she's got to show up somewhere to pick something up. So really make those directions simple for somebody to give. Okay, and then something that I wanted to include, because I've seen a lot more value in this just over the past few months even, but is not necessarily something everybody in this room is gonna wanna do with people, but it can be really, really great for Mother's Day. This experiential option. And so something like a workshop. Okay, so I can buy a ticket for me and my mom, or my mom and her sister, whoever, mom and grandma, to go make their own bouquet at a workshop. That is really beneficial from a consumer lifetime value approach. And you're like, what is that, Alexis? Well, it's the total value a customer brings to your farm over time. So it's not just today's purchase. It's not just that $50 workshop ticket. It's them getting to know you and forming a relationship with you in some way. And so then mom, who may have never heard of your business before, comes to your workshop, realizes you're in her community and that she can buy flowers from you every week. And so even if you break even on your workshop, which hopefully we always make money on, but even if you were just to break even, you gained a customer who's maybe then gonna buy your CSA or is gonna come visit you at the farmer's market, right? And so it's this beyond today's purchase that's valuable here. Same with a U-pick, same exact thought there. And this workshop can be on your farm. I would say that is the most bang for your buck from a consumer lifetime value. I don't like people on my farm personally. That stresses me out. So you can have this at, a bakery or some other place where you can form those community, building things in your town. So think of those outside places that you can do. Or if you don't mind having people on your farm, bless you. You can do, U-picks. You can invite other vendors, a coffee cart. You do a morning U-pick with mom. And, the ticket comes with a coffee and a scone, and she picks flowers, right? That's a whole experience that she's now, memorized and is going to come back to you for. So I will challenge you to maybe think on that and see how that might work for you in the future. Okay, all right, we're almost done. All right, so here's my challenge to you as people who are growing. I want you to set really lofty goals for Mother's Day. If you've never sold before, and you're like, I have no idea where to start, I don't care. I want you to say $1,000, $10,000. I want you to set a lofty goal. If you have sold before and you said, oh yeah, last year I made $1,000 on Mother's Day weekend, phenomenal. I want your goal to be 3, 5, all right? It's okay if you don't meet it, but I think Mother's Day is the best time to set a lofty goal because that's when people are buying flowers. It's the best time to meet a goal like that. And to start really thinking about what your production is gonna look like, what your needs are for staffing, things like that. How many items do you need to make and sell to reach your $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 goal? So I give you an example here. This is just day of retail type sales, not CSA stuff. You're gonna offer your premium, your ideal bouquet sells for $50, like we talked about, so you're also gonna include a $75 option. And you're going to say, all right, to meet my goal, I need to make $150 bouquets to make my $5,000 goal, or I can make 67 $75 bouquets, or I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Somewhere between 67 and 100 bouquets would be to meet my goal with what I'm offering this year. So with those product numbers in mind, you're gonna think about, okay, for a $50 bouquet, maybe you have 25 stems in it, 20 stems, whatever it is. You kind of have that mentally in your brain. So are you gonna have enough product? If you say I need 20 stems and I need 20 stems and I have to make 100 bouquets, do you have enough product? Are you growing enough that's gonna be ready? And if you do grow enough, great. Do you have enough staff to help you harvest all of those stems, to help you design all those bouquets, to wrap all those bouquets? Do you have enough space in your car to transport 100 bouquets? Those types of things are what you're going to think about now, moving into every Mother's Day. So when you set a lofty goal for yourself, you can really start doing the really basic math to figure out if you're going to be able to meet that goal. And if not, okay, that's my goal next year. And I know I need to have way more campanula because I'm going to lose some to disease anyways, in order to have at least 3 stems per bouquet. So that would be my challenge to you, so start thinking about that. Yeah. I cannot. You know why? Because my ranunculus might be $3 a stem, and my dianthus might be $1 a stem. So you've got to come up with your own recipe. And once you come up with your own recipe based on what you're growing, you can start pricing that out and figuring out, is this a 20 stem? Is it a 23 stem? What does that look like? And that's the hardest part, I think, for a lot of people growing flowers who are new is, well, how many stems? I don't know. What are you growing? A dahlia is worth a lot more than a zinnia, right? So I can't, because a 10-stem dahlia bunch might be $50 and a 10-stem zinnia bunch might be $10, right? So I wish I could, though. My job would be so much easier if I could answer that for you. Okay, so a few other thoughts I want to bring up. I kind of hit on this earlier. Flowers don't just bloom on Mother's Day, so do you have an outlet for those blooms before and after Mother's Day? Is your season going to start Mother's Day? Maybe your CSA is going to start and you're like, I'm not even going to bother with anything blooming until Mother's Day. That's perfectly fine. But I want you to really think about what your market is, because there's nothing worse than having the most stunning, fat, juicy ranunculus sitting in the field and nowhere to sell it. Because trust me, they are not going to wait for you. They're not waiting for Mother's Day. They're going to be gross. Are your price points accessible for your current clientele? So as you start thinking about your lofty goals and your ideal bouquet price point, if you're selling at farmer's market, what is going to actually sell at your farmer's market? You know, is it a $20 bouquet, or can you have a $50 option? Is that even viable? And if it's not viable, where are you going to go to get it? Or are you going to change your bouquet recipe so that you can sell a $20 bouquet? And then again, I want you to limit your product options. Mother's Day is crazy, and you're selling at a lot of places. Even if you're just selling at farmer's market, it gets wild, all right? For Mother's Day, people are very excited about flowers. So I want you to limit your options. 2, maybe 3 options. This actually can help drive sales, because who has looked at a website before and you're like, this pant comes in 18 colors and I don't know which one to pick, and therefore I don't buy it, right? So if I just give people a few options to go from, they can pick based on accessibility and their price point, right? They don't have to spend forever on my website. And it's going to make your life easier, because it is a lot easier to teach somebody how to, you're like, hey, I needed help for this. All you're going to do is make the $35 bouquet. This is your recipe. This is how many stems, whatever that is. And this is how you wrap it, okay? And so it's going to make your life a lot easier, and it's going to drive sales. So it's a win-win there. Okay, some resources. There are some that I didn't write up here, but I would highly recommend, and I just didn't write it for no other reason than I just forgot. But there are some great resources that were on that book table outside that were Flower Farming for Profit. Somebody help me out. Lenny Larkin's book, excellent book. I bought it with my own money, highly recommend. There is the Cut Flower Grower also out there that I, again, also own, bought with my own money, would highly recommend. But for a lot of the things we talked about today, that Cool Flowers book and the Specialty Cut Flowers book are the 2 that I use the most. I pull them off my shelf. In fact, all fall, they sit on my coffee table because I can easily grab it and look up something really quick. Let's see. Johnny's has a grower's library. That Snapdragon, remember those groups I was talking about? They have a chart, and I love me a chart. And they tell you which Snapdragon is in group 1, group 2, group 3, when it blooms, when you should plant it, all that great stuff. So go to their grower's library. Farmer Bailey also has grower sheets. Those are free. You don't have to buy anything to look up how to grow delphinium. It's right there, so you can see what they've got. I would tell you to follow local growers and look back at their Mother's Day offering and scroll. I'm not telling you to copy them, but if you're wondering if your dianthus are going to bloom in time for Mother's Day, you can scroll back to see the farm close by to you, maybe had dianthus, or maybe they had something. You can also look at that to say, okay, they're growing that, that's awesome, that's their niche, what can I do to kind of like fill that, right? If you were in Sarah Barney's talk, she talked about that with her tea. And so, how can you all complement each other in that way? Yeah, there's many other resources out there, so I would recommend those. And here's some contact info for you. So that's me up there. I go on a whole wide variety of crops. I just have a passion for cut flowers, which is why I tend to be the one to talk about that. Tara Vaughn is the cut flower and nursery extension associate at the university, and so her whole job is to focus on cut flower and nursery crops. And then Dr. Cindy Finiseth is in the horticulture department as a specialist, and she's also doing research on cut flowers, specifically ones that are good, or natives that are good for cuts. So if that's something you're interested in, she's really great, and she's got a research plot that she's looking at some stuff. So feel free to reach out with questions. Happy to answer them. Flowers are fun things to talk about. No one has told me I'm over time, but I am over time. So thanks for being here.